All right. All right, Nana, please take a roll.
Councilman Bundy,
Present.
Councilman Brennan,
Present.
Councilman King,
Here.
Councilman Stokes,
Present.
Mayor Sykes.
Present, let the record reflect that we do have a quorum for the Monday, September 14th, 2020 meeting. We'll run down to item number 2, public hearing for increased golf fees. Would anybody like to get up and speak to or against for the increased golf fees? Hearing none, we will close it out. Run down to item number 3, persons in the audience who would like to get up and speak for 3 minutes. Anybody in the audience?
Hi, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, so I'll try to make this quick. This came to you guys today because I wanted to talk about some statements that were made during the August 24th City Council meeting. As I'm sure you guys all remember, there was a motion that was brought before you to have 3 spots for tie downs, the fees waived for those for an FDO that's owned and operated by Mr. Tom Hogue, who's going to perform aircraft maintenance out there. I know you are all sick of hearing about tie down fees at the airport, so I'll try to make this very, very, very quick. During the conversation surrounding the validity of actually implementing the fees, I feel like there were 2 factually inaccurate and misleading statements that were made by Councilman Brennan. I just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of correct the record and let you know where I was coming from, sir. So during that meeting, as you guys were having the conversation, there came a point over there where you said, so he, obviously Mr. Hogue, he's asking to waive his fees all of a sudden because we delayed our vote and now he has to pay a fee, right? So the implication being that Mr. Hogue was only making the request to have the tie downs for his spots waived because he was somehow seeking retribution for you guys tabling the conversation about tie down fees as a whole until September. And that could not be further from the truth. In actuality, what the conversation was about treating every FDO at the airport equitably under city ordinance. As Councilman Stokes and Nina had pointed out, there's currently an FDO that operates out at the airport, and that FDO is given 3 tie-down spots. The fees for those tie-down spots are already waived. When Mr. Hogue found out that that was the case, he wanted to know why his FDO wasn't granted the same ordinance or the same courtesy of having those tie-down spots relieved. As a sponsor of the airport, he brought his case before the city and asked to be treated equitably underneath there. As the sponsor of the airport, you guys have an obligation to let him know if there are extenuating circumstances of why he is being charged a fee different than the other FBO, or making it so that he pays the exact same fee. The FBO or the FAA recognizes this under FAA Order 5190.6b, labeled Airport Compliance. Under Chapter 9, Section 2, Paragraph C, it talks about how the city should treat FBOs in relation to fees, and it says the sponsor must impose the same rates, fees, rentals, and other charges on similarly stationed fixed-base operators that use the airport and its facilities in a same or similar manner. That's all this was about. Mr. Ho wanted to know, since he operated an FBO in the same or similar manner as an FBO that already existed, why he was not being charged the same fees, and nothing more. The second statement that was made, I feel was taken completely out of context. The statement made by Councilman Brennan was that he said, not beating around the bush, I feel like he threatened us and said, if you make me pay, I'm going to take my business elsewhere, to the Gooding Airport or some other airport. I feel like this is just another attempt not to pay a fee that is essentially is required. And that could not be further from the truth. I feel like that statement was taken completely 100% out of context. If you'll recall the conversation that you were having with Mr. Hogue, you were making a point, which was valid and fair, that you felt that there was some level of, not discrimination, but there was some level of conflict of interest because Mr. Hogue owned an airplane and this would benefit him financially. You were engaged in a series of questions trying to get him to understand where you were coming from, and he was not relenting. He did not understand where you were coming from. At one point, Mr. Hogue made the comment that he didn't feel it was conflict of interest because he didn't have to pay the fee anyways. That prompted you to ask him directly and pointedly, could you take your airplane somewhere else? To which he responded truthfully that yes, he could take his airplane somewhere else, but he clarified what he meant by saying, or I could just put my airplanes in my hangar and I'm not charged a tie-down fee for aircraft that are in the hangar. If I really wanted to, I could build another hangar and then I wouldn't have to pay fees on any of those. To which he responded, I understand that there are a lot of options. But then at the very next city council meeting, I felt like that conversation was taken out of context to make it seem that unsolicited, Mr. Hogue had made a threat to take his airplane somewhere else. And I would just like it on the record that Mr. Hogue at no time said that he was thinking about taking his airplane somewhere else. He never said that he wanted to take his airplane somewhere else. And he never said that he would take his airplane somewhere else if he didn't get his way. He was simply answering questions that was asked directly to him as a councilman. It was not my intent today to come here and beat you up in any way. Councilman Brennan, I think you and I have a good working relationship. We've always been respectful. I feel like there's been mutual respect over there. But as somebody who sits on your airport committee, it concerned me that it was taken so far out of context, only because I'm hoping in the very near future, you and I, the mayor, the rest of the council, and the airport committee are all going to get to sit down and talk about tie downs and other airport issues in the future. And I don't want anybody on the airport committee to worry that if we have a disagreement, that a sitting city councilman will use his platform on Facebook to disparage them in any way and make it seem as though they were making threats that they did not intend. Again, I don't think that you did that maliciously. I don't think that you did it intentionally, but I think that there could be a perception perceived there that somebody was making a threat that they were not. And that could have potentially impacted Mr. Hope's business by leveling those types of charges. Again, I'm hoping that we can all sit down and go through there and get to a point where we understand that disagreement does not equal corruption or any nefarious dealings, and that we can all just work together to make the airport as self-sustaining as possible as we go forward. We do have an airport board meeting tomorrow. I would love for you all to be there. And again, nothing personal. Again, I think we have a good relationship. I just wanted to get that out there that I felt that that statement was taken out of context. So thank you very much for your time. You guys have a good night.
Thank you.
I can't all be at this meeting.
Right, no. You can only have two.
Unless we post it,
Well,
I can't all be at the
two
meeting.
All right, anybody else like to get up and speak for 3 minutes? Hearing none, we'll go down to item number 4. Councilman, you guys got something?
Mayor,
Councilman Brennan?
I got a lot of questions. I'm not going to pull anything immediately. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, you're good. So you guys got anything really quick? If not, we can run down to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, real quick.
Yes, sir.
Christina Drake, Tabitha Dudley, and I are putting on the First Responder Appreciation or Celebration Day this Saturday, Century 21 parking lot, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come and say and thank the first responder, police, fire, EMS.
We're at?
Century 21 parking lot, downtown,
What time?
11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
All righty. All right, council, we'll run down to, if you guys have nothing else, we'll run down to consent agenda. All right, I don't know if I consent agenda. Councilman Brennan?
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Jumped ahead. Again, just a few questions. Again, not pulling anything immediately. I wanted to ask on item E, the extension to entry point agreement. Is there any, this item wasn't in my packet. Is there any increase in fees for this? Or is it,
Councilman Brennan, no, it's the continuance of the contract we presently have. It's like has to be renewed on a year to year. So it's just the same fee, just renewing it for another.
Thank you. And then on items, excuse me, items O, P, Q, S, T, and T. There's just the way the contract is written. I'd like to ask for essentially one word to be added under the payment agreement and summary of costs, specifically on the Elmore County Domestic Violence Council. It's subsection C, and unless I pull every single one of them out in front of me. This doesn't talk about reimbursement if that service that we're giving money to ceases to exist in the middle of a year, because subsection A says we will pay a lump sum up front. So, for instance, if the Elmore County Domestic Violence Council shuts down in March and we've paid for a whole year, I'd like to add in all of these by interlineation a word about reimbursement, so that, granted, we may not pay any more, but we get our money back if they shut down mid-year.
I like it.
Where would you like that word added?
Mr. Turner,
So I know where I'm adding it.
want to see this one?
Or you can tell me after the meeting, Paul, I'll add it in all of them. I just need to know where I'm adding it to.
At the very end of the sentence where it ends with a period.
What page are we on? What page are we on?
Oh, page 2, of the
Paragraph what?
paragraph
We're all
4,
gonna be different, don't I?
payment agreement and summary of costs. It just says in the event that the acronym there curtails or ceases services, the city shall be under no obligation to pay for those months or portions of those months which the services aren't available to the residents of the city. And the city shall be reimbursed for those months not utilized. One word, sorry.
Oh.
So you want one word, the lawyer gets it, and it's like 11 words now.
Sure.
So you're good with all those, and then we just stick that in there?
Yes.
Councilman, you good with that?
I think that's a good idea, Councilwoman.
And just so you are all aware, Mr. Mayor, if I may, W, X, and Y, I realize how these things go, but I absolutely, utterly despise those bank agreements. Hate them. And I think they're unconstitutional in most respects. But I tried last year to get the thing altered, and it was an act of Congress to get it to be changed. But it violates our Constitution in some respects.
Even with the non-appropriations clause put in
That's
there?
the part that's unconstitutional. The non-appropriations clause says that we're under, basically, if the city does not appropriate the necessary funds, we're out of this contract, but the city shall do all things necessary to appropriate it. Well, but if we don't appropriate it, then that means we haven't done all things. So it just comes back in a full circle, but it is what it is, and if we ever go to war on it, it'll be fun.
Okay.
So we're okay to proceed.
Yeah, it's not gonna, unless you, I mean, you're not gonna get to mow anything if you don't do it, and you won't get to all these little, it's all the same agreement. I keep seeing over and over again. I'm like, that's illegal, that's illegal. But it does me no good, so.
Mayor?
I just wanted to gripe, I guess.
Go ahead, Councilman.
For the Treasure Valley Transit, item R, I just had a question. It does talk about the $11,000 from the fiscal year we're wrapping up right now, plus 11,000 for the soon-to-be new fiscal year. Is there any, what do you call it, Paula, a holdback from that 11,000 that it can't be spent for 2 years on this type of item?
Did we carry it over? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Councilman Brandon and I contacted them and they know. So we pushed that 11,000 so they can spend it in the new budget.
All in 1 year
So
here.
they'll have both 11,000 from the current budget and 11,000 in the new budget.
Okay. Excuse me one second to pull that contract in. Under subsection D of that contract, if Treasure Valley Transit does not use this payment for the replacement of a bus for Mountain Home route, the total amount will be returned to the city. And I asked myself by when? When do they have to buy that bus?
Is that this fiscal year, Paul? That's what we decided in the budget meeting.
Which is before September 30th of 2021.
So it's this fiscal year.
So they have to spend it now.
No,
Well, the
20
fiscal year that it,
That's coming up.
2021.
the one that it's
Okay.
budgeted in.
But if it doesn't say that, it should.
Okay, so do you want me to add they have to do it by 2020, September 30th, 2021?
Within that fiscal year, you may say.
I'm curious, what do we do if they haven't got enough money to buy their bus by then? Is it another rollover or carryover?
Councilman Brandon, they would have to come back to council in their presentation and explain that.
Okay.
It won't be released until we have an invoice and proof that that's been purchased.
That they bought a bus?
Yeah, we're not supposed to submit that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman.
I have no problem putting that in there, but we're not gonna pay them for the bus until we get the bill for the bus. So we wouldn't give them that money before they have the bus anyway, but if we want to put that in there as a safeguard, I'm okay with that. But we would never send them the check without them having purchased the bus already. But that's okay, it's a safeguard and that's fine.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I had a pretty lengthy conversation with Terry, who does the presentation, and gave her the council's expectations for next year.
Oh.
On the count of county participants, also on what would the probable funding be. So she won't come into a surprise, she should have all that ready for you guys. And I also reflected that in the letter that went to the city. Hers is a little different.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And one more thing. Mayor, this is for Nina. For the item U, which is the proposed personnel policy update, I don't know if it's ever specified, so I'm just asking. It says these benefits are provided to all employees who work 20 hours or more per week. Does that mean every week, like that they're regularly scheduled for 20 plus hours?
They're a part-time, they're considered a part-time employee. They have to work 20 or more hours per week. They fall under the per se. We have to pay per se on them and all that. They work less than that, they don't qualify for benefits.
Okay. There's nothing, like if somebody gets over a 19-hour employee, do we have any of those? 19-hour employee who then works a 23-hour work week 2 or 3 times during the summer, that doesn't
No, they don't
qualify them?
qualify. No.
Okay. That's all I had on that one. And finally, Mayor, I would like to have a discussion on item D. I'm not quite sure as to the implications of this, so I'd like to just pull item D.
All righty. Councilman, other than item D being pulled, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or pull? Hearing not, can I get a?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to pass the consent agenda and remove item D.
D. Right? D as in dog?
Mayor,
Councilman Brennan?
for the attorney, do we need to make any statement in the motion about the changes we made by interlineation?
Yeah, that would be, thank you. That would be prudent to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I amend my motion to include all the changes we have discussed in 19 of the contract.
Second.
The motion and second to approve the consent agenda with all the changes. I will call for the question. Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
And removing item D.
And
Did we say
removing
that?
item D,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Okay. All right.
Councilman Bundy? Aye. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
All righty. Going down to old business, there was none. Item number 6. Item number 7 is new business. Item removed from the consent agenda. And that would be item number, letter number D. Councilman Brennan?
Trying to pull up that contract really quick. Excuse me. Going the wrong direction.
Right after Bill's.
So on this, I guess you call it archive social request, social media public records compliance. It talks about the importance of having a permanent record for social media, I guess, for videos we post, but comments that the city or citizens post, as well as maybe any rebuttals by the city officials themselves. We recently went away from the Facebook platform, right? And we did that. Don't quote me. This is a question. Did we do that because we wanted to eliminate all the comments, and so we took it to YouTube, so there's no comments?
Go ahead, Mike.
No, we switched from the Facebook Live platform to YouTube, which is still linked through Facebook for the stability of the platform. Basically, Facebook updated their Facebook Live and it was not working for anybody. It was happening at the beginning of the pandemic as well. So as I was trying to work from home, Nina and Paula were really having struggles with it. When I came back and started trying to use it, it was giving me glitches too. We would go up for 30 seconds and then it would crash on. So I made the decision literally in the middle of a meeting. I I swapped over to our YouTube account and went live there, made that announcement there. We've been on YouTube since. We've had no problems. The sound issues are fixed. The video quality is better, and stability is there. It's not giving us any problems. However, we did have subsequent conversations with the city attorney regarding comments during live city council broadcasts, because those comments are akin to, in his legal opinion, somebody sitting in the back of the room yelling at the council through the entire meeting, rather than coming here and speaking in person for their allotted 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, or during the allotted time for a public hearing and so forth. So we have since gone through and eliminated the comments from those meetings. However, for the rest of the platform on our social media, and that doesn't just include the City Hall Facebook page, but also the police, the fire department, the Parks and Recs department, the Mountain Home Sheriff, the Economic Development Department. Comments are allowed on all regular posts on those, and those comments, that is going to be true for every government site that you see, from our level all the way up to the White House. We see social media comments are allowed on all those things. What has been brought up, and please correct me if I'm wrong, one of the concerns is that those social media platforms have no obligation legally to preserve any of those records themselves. People come in all the time, make a comment, decide that they don't like the feedback that they're getting from that comment, remove that comment, and then all subsequent feedback, including any city responses to it or anything like that, would be removed. If we then get a public records request asking to see those comments, Facebook can't provide that to us. It's just gone. It's gone out there. What this does for us is it will capture that. It'll also capture if I post something, if the city posts something, and then I have to make an edit to it, I've made some sort of mistake or something to it, I have to make an edit to it, or update information on it, it will capture in live time both of those, and timestamp. This is the version that went out between this time and this time. This is the version that went out from this time to forward from then on. And so we'll have records of all versions of those things. The other thing that is included in this package, and you have to actually have the electronic version to click on these to get the full story on these, is cities have been sued successfully several times for removing content or hiding users' comments. So that can be necessary at times for us to do if those comments violate community standards. If they're racist, if they're making threats of violence, if they're, those sort of things. It can be absolutely necessary for us to remove those and for repeat offenders to block those people. However, we don't have a record of that when it goes to court, when they come back to sue the city for abridging their right to free speech, and we can't produce a document saying this is why they were in clear violation of community standards, they were posting racist, hate speech, they were making threats to public officials, and so forth. We'll lose that case, and the city will be out a lot of money. And so Archive Social is sort of the solution to that, because they capture all of that in real time. So not only can we fill public records requests, but this stuff could come back and be used by us as defense in court cases. It also captures not just the comments, but it captures all the digital signature data, so that it can be traceable back to the user and the computer that those posts and comments were made from, as proof that is indeed the individual that made those comments.
Do you mean like it puts a IP address on every comment from, not just from the city, from every individual?
From every individual, yes. We can track all the digital signatures from everything, is all captured by this service. So you have the invoice. There were a couple of different prices they gave us. One was a 1-year price, one was a 3-year price, and they were going to give us, as an introductory offer, 2 months out of the first 12 for free. But that covers all of those sites that I mentioned, and will include our YouTube, our Instagram, and every social media platform that we use across the city. So it won't just be it's not a price tag for one site. I will be able to log into this site and then log into every one of our social media pages for all those different departments from that site. And it will, as soon as I do that, it will begin capturing that information immediately.
Mr. Mayor? Make a comment on this too. I think it's a great question to have because I've had a couple of folks, and we've all done our research on this. A couple of folks have approached us and they were perhaps of the opinion that moving from Facebook to YouTube was an attempt by us to make things harder for people to find when it's exactly the opposite. This ability for us to actually real time have a company that's looking at it makes it so that somebody can't go in, like you're saying, and change a Facebook post so that it disappears.
Right.
So this actually protects the people of Mountain Home more and protects their voice even more because, like, if something has to come down, there's still a record of it to prove what was said. So I think the idea that we're archiving is a good idea, and I think these are good things to get out to the citizens, that we're moving to a system that gives us a better ability to understand and let the voice be heard, but also to be able to protect that voice.
Councilman.
I got a question for council. With them moving the comments on the city council and having comments available on everything else, do you concur with that? Does that basically take care of one of the concerns you had quite a while ago about them having their own basically council meeting by being able to comment on a council meeting? So that does take care of your concern that way, then the rest of it you're
My
okay with.
understanding is that all the websites are still open and people can comment, on the Facebook page, and all those resources for comments are still available to people. But my nightmare would be during a public hearing.
Right.
And people are hearing it and people are pseudo testifying. If even during public comment, it's being recorded right now. But whereas to the extent that if it got back to council members or somebody else reported what somebody else was saying on Facebook and all that stuff, now you're creating this nightmare of maintaining a public record of what was occurring during the meeting itself. So that was the part that I had some concern with, that people can comment about what they talked about and put it on the Facebook page.
Right, but that's irrelevant to the meeting that's
Right.
going on at hand and being currently recorded, though.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then to comment on Mike's presentation, we're in strange little legal territory here because we're on the cutting edge of a lot of this stuff because these are new issues. I'm familiar with those lawsuits. There's a difference between a public records request versus, a lawsuit later that someone's First Amendment rights have been done. I cannot tell you legally I also can't tell you that it's not required, but I suspect it's not. I don't think this program is necessary to satisfy a public records request pursuant to the law, because the only records all records are public records that are maintained by the city. That's in the statute itself. And Facebook is not something that we maintain. It's just something that's literally being recorded. It's a medium to deliver it outwards. And so I don't think we're under any obligation to do that. But then again, there's no case on that. So I don't really know. I can't tell you with any authority on that. I can just tell you by the strict language of the statute. It's something that when the statute was written, nobody even
Wasn't around.
didn't even consider that this could be an issue. But I can't imagine how it would be required because it's not something that it's not our medium that we're maintaining. As opposed to this, we are required to produce an audio recording of it because we are maintaining this. That I'm pointing the microphone. Not true with a Facebook account, or not true with that. But as to all the other issues that the council has already mentioned in Mike's presentation, I agree with that. It's a relatively inexpensive way to just keep things honest and make sure you're being recorded. We know your IP address. Everything that's said is there. And so it keeps things on the up and up versus it just vanishing in Facebook land. And to the extent, and here's where, again, coming back to the legal concerns that I have to consider is somehow if it gets into the decision-making on something, and it's about some Facebook post that somebody represented, blah, 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 and then it makes it part of the decision, I need to know where that was. And I need to find it, maybe after the fact, potentially 6 months later. You know, how on earth could I do that? That's impossible for me to do when it vanishes so
Right,
quickly.
when it can be.
So, you know,
Okay.
my only concerns is that once we take this on, now we got to kind of follow through with it. I don't think we're under an obligation to ever do this. This is voluntary on our part. No legal maxim that we do it, otherwise it would be in statutory form, and it isn't. Again, when this stuff was written, none of this stuff was ever thought about. So we're kind of in uncharted territory. So it's not required, but it's prudent.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
I had a question about the city's Facebook pages and what happens when someone goes live. Are we obligated to record that and keep all those comments, and will that cover us there on that front?
It'll cover absolutely everything. So if the mayor goes out, say we have another project like the skate park, and he goes out and just puts his iPhone up and starts talking to it, all of that will be there, including all the public comment and all of that as well. And the database is searchable by keyword and by date. I can, find literally anything that I'm looking for through this thing. I've had the representative sat down with me and gave me a good example and used Elmore County's account to show me a couple of different ways that you can search and find things like that. So yes, and including these broadcasts as well. I mean, I don't see one of these like an entire broadcast just disappearing off of Facebook, but this might be something that would make it easier. If we got a question about a city council meeting from a year ago, rather than me scrolling for an hour looking for it, through the feed, I could literally search up the date and it would pop up, and I can have the information at my fingertips. We'll just make it simpler in that.
But again, as you framed your question, not legally required, because in that respect, the mayor, so this city council meeting has to be maintained in that respect.
Yeah.
But the mayor going and doing a press conference on Facebook Live, that's no different than the mayor going and doing a press conference and KTVB recording it, and then somebody doing a public records request to us for a KTVB news report. Well, it's not our medium. So back to that. That is our medium. Facebook is not our medium. KTVB TV is not our medium. The radio is not our medium. So think about all the ways mayors have been making presentations to the city saying, hey, guess what we're doing next week? For the last 100 years. Well, it was radio, and then it was TV, or it was oratory, Actually, there is no way to record it, and it was just the president of the United States, giving the Gettysburg Address. Well, unless somebody was sitting there, it's not a public record. So it's not something that's required. Again, it's prudent. And so I'm in support of it, by the way. I'm just saying, I want to make sure we're not creating some sort of legal requirement that we think we need to do.
Councilman Brennan?
Mike, the contract says archiving up to 3,000 social media records per month. What happens if we top over 3,000? Does it stop recording?
Well, we won't. We went through. I went through with the representative, showed him each one of the sites and everything. This is the estimate that he came up with. So there's three sizes of program that you can do. The one with the Elmore County, has is $199 a month because they have such a small social media presence. This is the medium-sized package, and is built to fit our needs. So this is going to do what we need.
I don't know, Councilman Brennan and I, we can keep talking more. We could up that. We can put it in the next category.
Okay, so for now we're safe, and that's 3,000 total across all of our platforms.
Across all platforms for the entire city.
Okay, and then the specifically for city council meetings, the YouTube, which you're recording on now, are there comments allowed on that?
No, there are no comments allowed during the live portion.
But as soon as live ends, then is that when they
Not
can?
not on YouTube.
No.
They could go back to where I posted the link on Facebook and comment what they thought about it. But there's nothing that's going to be coming through live during this meeting. Because, as Paul said, it's akin to them sitting in the back of the room and screaming comments at us when we're trying to hold the meeting.
That isn't being taken down and isn't being addressed,
Right.
here's
It's
your
not-
3
it's
minutes.
not being recorded
Here's your 3
appropriately.
minutes.
And so let me make sure I understand. YouTube allows no commenting ever
Oh, it does. We turn the comments off during this meeting.
during the meeting. As soon as the meeting's done, you turn them on.
No, so I just
Oh.
turn the meeting off, and again, they can, on the Facebook page where the link is posted to YouTube, they can comment on that post.
Okay. This might be outside the scope of this request, but I tend to like to allow the citizens to comment, and even if it's not during the live meeting, but after the fact, so that, we can get a feel for their needs too. And
Right, and that's, like I said, you can still do that on the Facebook page, where this is posted. Like, if you go to Facebook right now, you would see that there's a link there. And someone could go on there and comment about this discussion.
Right now.
That we're having
They
right
could be
now.
typing right now.
But they have to be watching YouTube and then going to Facebook and typing their comments there.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder, but what we're trying to accomplish isn't necessarily being accomplished, because they can still type a comment on Facebook while the meeting is going live on YouTube.
It is being accomplished because it's not coming through on
On an active
this
scroll.
during the meeting.
If people's computers are up. I've seen it before where people were actually doing it right then and there and viewing it. And it has to be part of a process that we're in right now if you're going to provide public comment, is what my concern is.
I could be sitting here looking at it right now, watching Facebook as they talk.
That would be that would be a nightmare for me.
Right.
And then says, well, because of what I just read on Facebook, I'm going to go do this now. I'm like, well, that wasn't part of our meeting.
But I agree with you. I like the comments too, because it sort of keeps the finger on the pulse of the community and lets me know sort of in real time what they're thinking about what's being said. However, they do still have that ability to go, and we have people that have done it. If you went to last week's feed, if you went to the Facebook page from last week and look, there are comments there about what we met, about the things that we talked about during last week's.
If you recall, about 6-7 months ago or something, at one point it was asked, hey, Mike, what are some of the comments that you're getting? And Mike you did a great job. And I was on Facebook Live at the time. It was during the quarantine. And you were reading out some of the comments and not other of the comments. Now, that's not on you because there's no possible way you could.
They were coming through.
Right,
so
they're coming
fast
so fast.
that they were
So you were
just-
selectively reading some into the record and others not into the record, and then some into the record, and then other ones were being skipped over. And I was like, we cannot do that. We just can't. The two processes, you could have an electronic media presence, but it can't be in the middle of your meeting because you couldn't possibly absorb all of that information. That's why you have 3 minutes undivided attention, 3 minutes undivided attention. I mean, that's why the process is the way it is.
That's why you can't sit here and watch Facebook while we're having a meeting.
I never will, but you're right. So, Mike, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. I'm just trying to get clarity here. Do you have the physical ability, as soon as our meeting ends, to click a button and allow commenting on YouTube?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can we allow that, Mayor? So that we can get, I just don't like.
I take no issue with that.
Watching here and commenting here. Like, if they're gonna watch it here, allow them to comment as soon as the meeting ends, and then it's not a live during our meeting issue.
Mike, could I ask a clarification question? Is, in essence, what we're asking, what's already happening? Because as soon as the meeting is over, doesn't the link to this meeting go to the city website where they can watch the city council meeting on our website? When you say you put the link to this meeting on the website, you're basically putting the link to the meeting.
It's on Facebook. It's not on the.
Or excuse me, YouTube. You're putting the link on our site to this meeting. So it's, I think it's the same thing. So as soon as this meeting, how soon after the meeting do you post the link to YouTube?
It was before.
It's on YouTube right now. So they're watching live on YouTube right now. When I click end meeting, it will just be as a video on YouTube.
And they can
Turn
comment
comments back. I can turn comments back on. People will be able to
Okay.
watch the video and comment below it. Or they can comment on the Facebook page where the link is.
which is being shown right now,
I just wanted to make.
but it's not part of our records.
Thank you.
I'm easy. I'll do whatever, just as long as Paul says.
I was just gonna
legally-
say, and Paul
or-
says it's okay with that, just to turn the link back on.
A lot
after
of-
it's
A lot of my concerns are alleviated with this archive thing. It alleviates some of my concerns. I get insulate, all of you by saying, don't open your Facebook and don't read some, but not all the comments sort of thing. That's the terrible scenario. But what I'm worried about is we're testifying faster than you could possibly read it. And then it's gone from Facebook and it's like, oh, that was part of the problem there. And I'm like, you know what, they can comment away and now we can archive it and keep the comments of it, but it keeps this process in here pure, so that if you want to address a particular issue, here's your 3 minutes. That's part of the process, so that you're not reading some of them but not others. And if it happened in this meeting, I mean, I guess you could choose to do this, but you'd have to physically leave the room if you wanted to ignore somebody's comment. Whereas on Facebook, that's impossible to track the way it was.
Roger that.
Are there any issues with turn commenting on after the meeting?
None at all. That's totally fine.
Specifically on YouTube?
Yeah, you could say, you could watch it, and then, yeah. I'm assuming the archive captures that too.
You okay with that?
fine with me.
Thank you.
And
So you just
Mike,
turn it off
correct me
when
if
we
I'm
have
wrong, because you went back, there's a question that I had for Mike, is I am not aware of anybody else who does that would have the live function on, but everybody can comment on the Facebook page of, City Meridian or something.
Yes. So the two that you had, two specifically that you had.
Eagle and Meridian.
Questions about were Eagle and Meridian. Went to both of those pages. You're correct that neither one of them allows commenting during their city council meetings, but on all regular posts, they allow comments.
That's what I thought. Okay. And that's what you
Correct.
looked into.
So we would be in line with all the other cities in the same Boise, Meridian, Eagle.
Right.
We basically be in line with all of them.
Yeah, because we're not the first ones to face this issue, so I
Definitely not.
was curious to know what our other cities around us were doing too.
Where?
Councilman Brandt.
Mike, are you in control of the archive? Do you get to go find it, or do you have to ask this
No,
company?
I'm in control.
Okay.
It's a cloud-based solution, but I'm the one that's logged on. I'm the one that goes and does the search for the information that we want and brings it up. However, they do have support personnel there that if I'm looking for something that I simply can't find, I can call them for assistance.
Okay. And are there any legal ramifications of logging every single IP address for every comment out there?
No, I mean, if you put yourself out there with your IP address to say, here's what I want to say, it's just like saying, here's my name and address for the record. If you do that, so you put yourself you can't claim you didn't know you were putting yourself in the public realm.
Do we need to tell the public? I mean, this may be telling the public in our meeting, but that
Might as well.
that they think they're going to post some anonymous
An
comment.
anonymous comment, no, you didn't.
We're going to know.
You might as well put that a little disclaimer on it, saying the meeting's available here. Bear in mind, archive, blah, 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 your
Put
IP
it
address.
put it in the about page or the page transparency on our social media page.
Yeah.
We'll add a little statement on the page transparency statement.
I refuse to believe logging on to a municipal website and then providing comments that you are surprised that you're now part of the public sphere, but yeah, prudent to do it.
Mayor,
Councilman Brandt.
I don't have any other issues. Do we need to decide, I guess, one, we move forward or we don't? In a 1 year or a 3 year? Is that the question we have to answer tonight?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Nat.
we are not locked in for 3 years. There is actually no contract, the guy
Oh.
told me. He said we're not locked into 3 years, but if we agree to pay this payment that's less money, then it's the 3-year payment. But we can get out of it at any time. We just, if we want to not pay it next year, we don't have to. Does that make
It's
sense?
still gonna be the same price as what that is, times 3.
Right.
Right.
So we sign,
Basically, depends on the phone conversation that you have. If you say we're gonna do 1 year, you're gonna pay a higher price. You say,
Yeah.
We'll do the 3-year price, you're gonna give you that price.
is it like serious where you can bargain down quite a bit when you're like, I don't want to do this anymore? I'm just kidding. Okay. No contract, we can exit at any time.
All right, Councilman, what do you guys want to do?
Mayor,
Councilman Bundy?
approve request of purchase from Mike Freeman, Communications Specialist for archiving of social media responses using a company called Archive System.
Second.
The motion is second. I'll call for the question. Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman Bundy? Aye. Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes? Aye. All right, we'll run down to discussion decision of Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations to amend and repeal city code sections 9-2-2, 9-9-26, 9-12-2, and 9-7-8. Brock, you're up.
All right.
Wait, unless the council, do you have any comments or discussions?
Let's hear this.
Okay.
Then I have.
All right.
Well, I just wanna know if he wants to go through with this tonight or not, because I'm gonna make a request that this be removed until next city council meeting. Because there's enough information in here, line by line by line, Title 9, 1, 2. There's enough that I could not go through everything and look at everything with any type of clarity over the weekend, to where I'd like another week to go over it again completely.
Can I piggyback on his comment?
Go ahead, Councilman.
I agree with you. I was gonna go through the conversation and listen to it and then ask for a working group. This was a 2.5-hour meeting, P and Z meeting.
Mhm.
So if they had 2.5 hours worth of questions, I would assume that we have at least a working group worth of meetings. So I can do it either way. We can go through the data here so that we can hear it and then think about it. But I'd like to go through these in a working group, and then we can come back. That's just me. The
So
other,
do you have a time that best suits for everyone that Brock could get with, and we could do a working group? Hang on one second, Brock. While you guys look at it, go ahead, Brock.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I understand that there is plenty of content there. One of the reasons that I do that is for full transparency for all of our citizens, but I've also provided you in there basically a summary of everything. It's kind of the Cliff Note version of exactly what's going to happen. The reason the packet is so big is because I need to illustrate exactly, this is exactly what's coming out, this is exactly what's going in, this is where we're going to move it. I have studies in there to back up what I said, so you can't be like, oh, Brock's just making stuff up. But I can actually cite myself to where I have received certain data. And that's why it's so big. It's just all for transparency and to give you the best information for the best decision possible. I'm fine however you want to proceed, but I really want to mention that there's a reason you have a comprehensive staff report, which provides in very clear detail, this is what I'm proposing, and this is why, and this is how it meets our city comprehensive plan. So I know it's a lot of information, but if any of you had the time to read this, there should be a solid understanding of any general points. And then through my presentation, I should be able to answer any questions you may have concerning the material.
Mayor,
Councilman Brennan?
I'm with Councilman Bundy on this. I'd like to hear the report, and then that'll help me have more things to think about if it gets delayed.
Yeah, I've got no problem with that.
Sounds good.
And I would just note to this body, this isn't going to be the first time we do this. There's going to be a learning curve. I have others coming up. So it should be bumpy because it's brand new. So it will take how long it takes. So with that,
You want to hit the power button?
Now I've got to move out the audience. I'm at the door.
You have the summary in your packet?
It's there.
We have to look at them.
I have that whole package.
Yeah, whole packet's there.
I'm looking for a summary.
Yeah.
It's on there too.
Probably maybe in the back.
After, it's like the fourth page, fourth, fifth page.
It's there.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't even know his password.
I know.
I can move back if I my head.
I am.
He's nervous.
Alrighty. So again, there's a lot to go through. I'll give a brief summary of everything that's going to happen because there's a lot that we're going to go through. The approvals that you would give, I'm not going to have you do just one blanket. Yep, we're going to do all of this. There's 5 different segments that we're looking at. One is amending the residential setback regulations for accessory buildings. Number 2 concerns the temporary uses chapter of re-pilling certain items and then moving certain items to other chapters of our city code, which are more relevant. Amending the parking overlay to be renamed and to amend it to have no off-street parking requirement, and to amend the bulk end coverage regulations for the C2 zoning district concerning building setbacks and building height. And then last, removing a footnote from the zoning schedule of bulk end coverage controls concerning commercial and business transactions only happen within a building. So first, we're going to start out with the setbacks. So we have 4 zoning districts: R1, R2, R3, and R4. The R1 zoning district, when it comes for accessory buildings, has a different setback requirement than R2, R3, and R4. So no detached accessory building can be closer than 10 feet to the rear or the side lot line. So we take this house right here. Here's its rear, and here's its side. However, in R2, R3, and R4, it only has to be 5 feet. In my findings, I believe that we currently have this only for aesthetic reasons. That in the R1 zoning district, generally you have larger lots. The minimum lot size is 17,000 square feet. Normally that's where the bigger homes are. So I can only assume that they wanted people within those zoning districts to have something such as a shed, such as a shop to be farther away from the property line for view purposes. However, when I look to other municipalities, one that I've worked in, Twin Falls, Jerome, Pocatello, all of them have the same accessory building setbacks for every residential district. Thus, I believe to be more in line with an industry standard and to make it more uniform and fair for all of our residential districts, that we should have a 5-foot rear and side setback for accessory buildings for all of our districts. And that's what is being proposed. Do we have any questions concerning this?
Mayor, do you mind if we interject with questions while he goes through?
You bet.
Mhm.
I actually, we suspend the Roberts rules really quick, and then if the councilmen want to interject with Brock, it's a open work session. Go ahead.
Right, real quick, on the example you used, you happen to pick a corner lot. Is it 5 feet from the sidewalk, or would it be the inside lot line?
That's actually a great comment, Councilman. So that's actually a poor example because corner lots essentially have 2 front yards,
Right.
and then they have 2 side yards. So, let's say you had a front setback, it would be 20 feet here, 20 feet here, and then the side yard would be 5 feet or 5 feet or what have you. So a better example, Councilman, would have been me to give you a interior lot and say, this is your side yard, this is your rear yard. So this is in the R2 district. So their shed only has to be 5 feet away from the side and 5 feet away from the rear. Whereas somewhere like here in the R1 district, it has to be 10 feet away from the rear, and 10 feet away from the side. And I will note that all accessory buildings do have to be behind the primary dwelling unit. So you can never really place them in your front yard unless it's a structure such as a carport.
Any reason it shouldn't be 3 feet?
The reason behind that is utilities. Currently, the way our subdivision regulations are is we need that area for all of our utilities. And traditionally, we have 5 feet worth of easements. So it's to be in comparison with that. I did toy with the 3 feet, but I believe that the 5 feet has already been working in the R2, R3, and R4 districts. So I don't know why it wouldn't work with the R1.
Basically, because we did have 5-foot utility easements on each side. Plus, if you get down to 3 foot, there's where fire stipulations become in your buildings. So if you get down to that point, now somebody's wanting to put a building in and doesn't want to do any type of fire coating on anything.
If it's under 5 and your neighbor has an under 5 as well, those accessory buildings, generally what you would have would be more fire retardation standards. You'd have to use materials that were more fire retardant.
That's not until you get down to 3.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If you change it to 3.
Oh, yeah, if you change it to 3, yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Slide.
So this is all of the discussion that I have for the accessory building setbacks. It was recommended by the Planning and Zoning District, by the Planning and Zoning Commission, that accessory building setback regulations for accessory building setbacks in residential districts be amended to comply with a single uniform standard of a 5-foot side and rear setback. So what I would ask this body, if you feel comfortable with just this portion and making a decision, that you either approve or deny Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. Speaking to this specific item.
Councilman, do you have any issues with
This
this?
specific item, I don't have a problem with.
I'm assuming P&Z had a public hearing.
There was a public hearing.
So do I have a motion to accept this change in the ordinance?
Yeah.
Councilman Brennan?
I make a motion to approve the planning and zoning recommendation to allow 5-foot setbacks in all residential zoning areas
For accessory building.
for accessory buildings.
Was there public comment as to this particular provision?
We had not received any public comment regarding any of the items.
Okay, so no one testified at the public hearing.
No one testified at the public hearing, neither did we receive any correspondence.
Second. The motion and second to approve the setbacks to 5 foot in all zones. The motion and second, I'll call for the question. Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman Bundy?
Aye.
All right.
Next up, this chapter is a little bit more complicated in what is being proposed. So currently we have a temporary uses chapter where I have found that we have certain content would be more relevant and more beneficial if I was a user to be elsewhere within our code. And there are others, and there are also portions that we just currently aren't enforcing whatsoever. So the first I want to speak about are the temporary construction uses. So we have rules concerning the temporary placement of construction buildings. Say we have a project that's fairly large, we need to have a trailer on site. And we also have something for temporary buildings. A temporary building is generally a building that is going to be there less than 180 days. I believe all of those items would be better suited in the building code than in the zoning code concerning construction. And then we have other commercial activities such as garage and outdoor cells. Currently right now, garage cells aren't necessarily being regulated. Our code says that you should have no more than 4 a year. I don't believe we have the code enforcement capacity to send Craig out counting how many garage sales are happening. However, I believe that this ordinance is still relevant because it gives us a tool for someone who is overly ambitious, who decides I'm going to have a garage sale every day and essentially turn my residential home into a flea market, that we actually have a tool to say, hey, you can't do that. Being that it concerns commercial activity, I believe it would be better suited in the business regulations along with outdoor sales. Outdoor sales are generally, if you have a storefront and you want to do a parking lot sale, what have you, that's something you're able to do. Again, that really isn't something that we enforce. But I believe still having it codified, but somewhere different, would still be beneficial for the city. Lastly, we have outdoor assembly. So currently in our code, you need a conditional use permit whenever you are doing an event on private property that has 100 persons or more.
Oh, good luck with that.
I verified with Nina and Paula. This is something that we are not enforcing. I believe in the prior tenure of our past building official, Mike never enforced this as well. This is essentially, and it's a public hearing in order to have that event. Being that we are not enforcing this, I believe our legal counsel would concur. I don't believe we should have regulations that we would never, ever enforce.
So on this one, Councilman, do you have any questions? The 9-9-26.
Paul, do you agree, the outdoor assembly one? You made
Yes.
that comment.
That's a dreadful idea, to regulate that.
What about the garage sale? I'm reluctant when we state absolutes, that we would never, ever enforce something. And so if we repeal this, somebody could, in theory, set up a permanent garage sale.
No.
Well, he has it in 6 a year.
It's just gonna be moved to business
Okay,
regulations.
okay, thank you.
The only one he was recommending repealing was the assembly of 100.
Okay.
This is one though with its removal in entirety. I would like to look at this a little longer just to see what, because everything he said is, there's more in this than just those 3 items. This is one I'd like to look at a little bit longer.
And I have your survey, and I love your survey, but it's a little dark for me to follow the survey. So, and I've looked through it. I mean, this one, it sounds good, but this one, I'm with Mike. I mean, maybe you want to take a little bit longer look at this.
Councilman Buddy, there was quite a bit of discussion with planning and zoning on the garage sale one. And it was to keep it so we still have some teeth. Yes, we don't really do that, but if somebody is really
Okay.
doing it
So
all
my
the time,
concern
their next door neighbor,
Yes.
we
Thank you.
need to have some teeth for this. So
Okay.
that was why moving it to a new spot, but keeping it.
That's what I wanted to make sure that.
We do have a few people that are on a every other week yard sale throughout the summer. In these times though, we have never pushed the issue just because
And that's-
of somebody trying to make a couple extra
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that we did have the ability,
to stop it if we
if
had to.
something got below, and we haven't seen it yet.
No,
No
Well,
neighbors
then,
have complained, and that's kind of where it is.
All right.
I'm curious, what is the length of a garage sale? Is one day, is a weekend a garage sale? Is it
Doesn't
a single
state.
day?
There is no definition.
I think we would need to add a definition. You guys have probably seen me now for 3 years. I'm all about definition and understanding because to me, I'm gonna have a weekend garage sale and that counts as one against my 6.
then that would be according to what we've viewed it as would be one.
One weekend?
Yeah.
Because most people started on.
They normally start on
Set it
Friday or Thursday
afternoon,
and.
go Saturday morning, and then they're done. So that's pretty much what we consider garage sale.
Mhm.
But for black and white, I think Brennan's on the track that.
Oh, yeah,
you should-
it sure should be some type
Yeah.
of definition of what a garage sale is, how long it's gonna be.
Right.
Is it gonna bust over into the street?
If I may, if this is one that you'd like to come back to or have further discussions with me, this is not necessarily an item that is preventing further action from the private sector or preventing development. This one was purely housekeeping. So we are on the clock to have all of this finalized in order to move with any future projects that are being proposed from the outside or to impede progress. So I would be comfortable as a staff member if you wish to have more details concerning this portion. If you want me to propose definitions to go along with it and to have it be very clear, staff would be more than happy to do a presentation at a later date for its final approval.
Councilman, are
I'd
you
just
good
like
with?
to read it a little more, is what I'd like to do, and if I have questions, then I'll get hold of it.
All right, Councilman, so we'll push the 9-9-26 to a working group. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Oops. All right, let's go to 9-12-T.
Rob, quick question. For that one, how did planning and zoning think about that one?
I was surprised out of everything that we're discussing. I believe that was going to be the least controversial item, but I believe what makes that one complicated is, so Title IX generally is to deal with permanent land uses. I don't want to be necessarily saying this is how someone has to operate commercially, especially on a temporary basis. There was long discussion. They understood that at the end of the day, they wanted to have a tool in case someone decided to turn their residential home to a 24/7 garage sale, that there was a way to stop that. But they also wanted to maintain private property rights and for people to continue with that. So they thought that a nice middle ground would be to still have that rule, up it from 4 to 6, and then to give it all to you.
Throw in yard sales with garage sales too, right?
I will work on the
All right.
definition.
Councilman, and on that, just that too, they had no problem moving it to another section.
Okay.
As long as-
At a garage sale, can you buy anything except for a garage? Sorry, I joke.
Actually, in back garage too.
All right. The next item I have before you is what personally is staff, I believe will merit the most discussion and be the most controversial. Leading into it, I wanted to show this short video. I believe I've sent it all to you before. If you haven't seen it, now we're going to take the time to watch it. It's concerning the reason why I am asking what I'm asking concerning our parking overlay downtown.
And we've come up with a design that puts 12,000 people in one building.
4 months before he died in 2011, Steve Jobs made his final public appearance, pitching Apple's new campus, which opened this year. Central to his vision was turning existing parking lots into a green landscape.
The overall feeling of the place is going to be a zillion times better than it is now with all the asphalt. So we'd like to plant a lot of trees, including some apricot orchards.
But Jobs didn't mention that the new parking structure on campus would have more floor space than the office building. That's because it wasn't Apple's plan. The decision came from the city of Cupertino, which demanded 11,000 parking spots for the campus. But Cupertino is hardly unique. It's estimated that in America, there are 8 parking spots for every car, covering up to 30% of our cities, and collectively taking up about as much space as the state of West Virginia. The more parking we have, the more we're able to drive. So the rules that manage our parking not only influence the way we move around, but also shape our urban landscapes.
If you look at pictures of the American cities around 1920 and 1930, all of the curbs are just completely filled with parked cars. And they couldn't use prices to manage demand because the parking meter wasn't even invented until 1935.
This is Donald Shoup, an urban planning professor at University of California, Los Angeles, whose specialty is parking. As cars filled cities in the early 20th century, 2 inventions came to dominate parking management throughout the United States. The first was the parking meter.
The meter manufacturers popularized the parking meters, and they offered them free to cities, and they kept the revenue until the meter was paid for in about 6 months, and then the city got all the revenue. They offered to install them on one side of the street only, so people could see how it worked on one side and how it worked on the other. At the same time the parking meter was invented, cities invented the idea of off-street parking requirements.
On-street parking requirements, also known as mandatory parking minimums, are the second invention. And though you may not be aware of them, most of the parking lots you're used to exist because of these rules in the background.
Look at any place from the air, any suburban place from the air, you'll see an awful lot of land taken up for parking. And most people don't know why. It's our policy that we require our cities to be built with a lot of parking.
With suburbanization after World War II, parking requirements became popular with city governments. They forced developers to include parking for their new buildings, which created a huge supply of parking at no cost to the city.
Off-street parking requirements really spread throughout the United States faster than almost any other urban planning invention. They arose partly because of the lack of management of on-street parking. If you can't manage the on-street parking properly, you need off-street parking requirements, or everybody will say, how did you let this building be built when there's not that parking?
A typical requirement looks like this. For every 1,000 square feet of new building, there has to be a set number of parking spots, which varies by land use.
You have to have a parking spaces per something. There could be a number of spaces per bassinet in a hospital, or per holes in a golf course, or per 1,000 gallons of water in a swimming pool. One of the honest ones is for a funeral home, because that's sort of the parking spaces per one.
An average parking spot requires about 330 square feet, which includes car storage and empty space, allowing the car to move in and out and for doors to open. That means if a policy requires 3 spots per 1,000 square feet, the parking lot needs to be the size of the building, and many parking requirements need more spots. A restaurant may need 10 spots per 1,000 square feet, making the parking lot over 3 times larger than the restaurant.
Planners don't have any training in how to set them. There's really no way to say how much parking every building needs. So the pseudoscience that has grown up is like blood letting, which was a major form of medical treatment for a couple thousand years. And they're not just like parking requirements today.
Building parking is expensive, especially when it involves a large construction project.
We pay for the free parking that we demand in every role we have in life other than as a driver, as a taxpayer, as a resident, as a shopper. And just because you pay nothing at the parking lot at the grocery store doesn't mean the cost goes away. It's still there. It's just that the driver isn't paying for it.
Developers who don't comply with parking requirements pay tens of thousands of dollars in fees for every spot that they don't include. A lot of times, these costs prohibit new development.
This is one of the most valuable landowners. Land is expensive for housing, but it's free for parking. And you wonder why we have a problem.
Parking requirements often result in more parking space than building space, pushing buildings further apart from each other, making it harder to walk and encouraging more driving. Many of the dense cities that we love, like Paris or Washington, D.C., or Amsterdam or New York, wouldn't look like this with parking requirements. These arbitrary rules continue to shape the growth of our cities and increase traffic congestion. But the excessive amount of land dedicated to parking is able to be repurposed.
We have a terrific opportunity to convert underused parking lots into housing where people want to live. The upside is that we have a lot of benefits to reap from changing our policy. Well, there's more than 800-page book down into 3 bullet points. I have 3 basic recommendations. Remove all street parking requirements, charge the right price for on-street parking, by which I mean the lowest price the city can charge, and still have 1 or 2 open spaces on every block. So nobody can say there's a shortage of parking. In order to reach that price, you have to vary it by location and time of day. So once you've done that, and make it politically popular and spend the revenue on public services on the major streets. Well, I'm worn out.
Alrighty. So there is your crash course to off-street parking requirements. What I'm proposing today isn't nearly as radical as what is being proposed by Mr. Shoup, who has a wealth of knowledge. I am primarily concerned with downtown. So here is the parking overlay map of which our parking overlay is enforced. So all of you have an idea. We have the old Paul's building over here, City Hall, downtown. Does everyone have a clear idea of what the parking overlay consists of? All right, so our current parking overlay, this is essentially it, has a few issues, especially when it comes to new buildings and use changes. So if, per our current parking overlay, if I am to demolish one of our older buildings downtown, if I rebuild it, I have to provide off-street parking now. I can't rely on the existing on-street parking that is there. Further, let's say I have an old commercial building, but I wanted to retrofit it to apartments and provide housing downtown. If I do that, now I have to provide off-street parking for all of my residents, which is 2 units per dwelling unit. Which if you look downtown, some of those buildings, they encompass the entire piece of property. Where retrofitting something for residential uses would be impossible to do. The keys to a prosperous and successful downtown is somewhere where you're able to work and play and purchase and most importantly, live. Businesses love those when they have the customers living right next door. It creates better access. It creates a better local economy downtown. What I'm recommending is all of this be thrown out and it be simplified based upon the facts. The first slide I showed you had this statement, which is from Donald Shoup, which is staunch conservatives often become ardent communists when it comes to parking, and rational people quickly turn emotional. What I would ask from this body is that you look at the facts, and the facts are here. So downtown, prior to doing the downtown revitalization project, Boise State University came down and they did a parking study because we were going to actually take away parking spaces by doing our lane diets and also by making it so that our sidewalks were bigger. They found at the end of the day that we have 336 parking spaces within that overlay, within that downtown area, and that the average occupancy rate is only 36%. With a 2-hour stay and a 70% occupancy rate of those 336 spots, it is estimated that during an 8-hour period that almost 1,000 cars could be parked a day. I believe that our downtown has enough parking to suffice for further development, that we do not need people who want to come and invest downtown use the precious land that we have downtown to provide parking. Parking structures are insanely expensive and they never pay for themselves. In my tenure while a city planner in Twin Falls, I've seen parking kill projects because it doesn't pay for itself. It's estimated that your standard parking space is $7,000 just to initially install and put in, and then there's maintaining it. And if we speak to the assessor, we don't collect property taxes a lot off of the parking. Most of the time, it's concerned with the actual building that is there. So it's terrible for tax revenue. What I'm asking is that the first one's really easy, that the parking overlay be renamed the downtown parking overlay, and that its purpose be to promote the investment, innovation, and vibrancy of the city of Mountain Homes downtown. And then I want the regulation to be one sentence, that 0 off-street parking be required within the downtown overlay for existing and new uses.
The biggest case in point, Councilman, is take the hub building. If someone comes in there and repurposes it, they have to find parking. So I think there, in case lies an issue that no developer's going to come in and have to go find, you know what I mean? They're going to have to put either in the basement or they're going to, you know, it's cost inducive. So if we could get a developer here, take the hub, let's say apartment complexes downtown, you know, we have ample parking downtown, and it entices the developer to, you know, if he doesn't have to pay obviously $7,000 a spot, and he puts that money back into the hub building or another, let's say the Paul's building, whatever case in point that might be. But I think that's where you're trying to hit home on, right, Brock?
Correct, Mayor.
So if somebody came in, could we do a waiver for that structure?
I believe that the problem you can get in is you would have to have a framework of how you approve those certain projects. That needs to be very specific, which sometimes that framework is hard to enforce consistently.
Why would they do it for you but not?
Oh, I get it. That's
No.
posing the question. Here, I don't necessarily, this one, is very complicated. And I appreciate the introduction, but parking has been our biggest point of conversation throughout our downtown renovation. If we're going to do more parking thinking, then we need to think about it. And your comment earlier was, this is a new process, and sometimes government works slow. Sometimes it takes a while to get to a good idea, but we don't want to go to a bad idea too quick. And I'm not saying this is a bad idea, but this one I would like to have more information on and some time to think and some time to look at it.
And Councilman Bunny, see, I would take the approach that we have El Rancho, Railroad Park.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with the concept. I just want more time to think about it. I want more time to really look at it. Because the video talked about parking meters. I mean, do we recommend parking meters? Because I don't think we do.
No, we have a 2-hour
Okay.
ordinance
So
right now.
basically, the video you showed us, some of it applied, some of it didn't. Correct?
No, go ahead, excuse me. I didn't
But
interrupt.
yeah, I would like to hold off. There's a little conversation perhaps I'd like to have with you also on this project.
Yeah, I can agree 100% because we've looked at this for several years trying to decide which way to go. But since the downtown lane diet has come into effect, parking downtown councils in the past have been getting beat up over something terrible. It's something we do need to think of because their mountain home is not used to parking around the corner and walking. They're used to parking right in front of where they want to go. And this changes that a bit to where I agree that I think this is something that we should look at just a little bit more.
I want to see that 36%, how they arrived at that. I could tell you, I bet you everybody in this room has driven around Boise block after block.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to find a darn parking spot.
Mr. Mayor,
There is not 64% availability when I'm driving around there.
my argument to that respectfully, Counselor, is that you still go to Boise though.
Well,
You
that's-
still go and you drive round and round to go downtown. You still go there. It does not make it so you don't want to go there,
But I don't live there, I live here.
or you wouldn't go. And you do live here, and this is specifically for the downtown area. This
Right.
isn't for the city. I believe you have data that I put in with the packet that illustrates mathematically, I believe we have more enough for this one area of town to go without a parking requirement.
In response, we moved our offices out of the downtown core because parking was impossible for our staff, and they had to park over a couple miles away and then take a bus into it, and we were having staff issues with that. So we moved out of the downtown, and there was an article in the Idaho Lawyerly, or whatever it's called, of businesses like mine that we moved out into Garden City because there was no parking, and it was getting atrocious to try to find places for your employees to park. So this is not a simple one-size-fits-all solution.
So we're gonna
It is.
move
And
this
I
one.
appreciate all Brock's work that he's doing, but I would like to go along with Councilman
And I'm not disagreeing. I just want
Bundy and agree
to
to
look at
look
it.
at this just a touch more.
Okay, so 9-12-2, we'll do a working group on that one as well.
A couple questions on this one from me. The 336 spaces, is that pre-phase 1, 2, and 3?
That's post.
So when we're all done, we'll have 3.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then for the record, I want to put it out there. If we were to approve this,
Mhm.
is it your intent to ask for paid parking down the road
No,
in the downtown overlay?
not unless it wanted to be part of further discussion by this body.
So I've got 2 councilmen that want to push it. What do you 2 guys want to do?
I revert back to the BSU study that was done here in downtown Mountain Home that Brock's referring to, which shows that we have enough spaces. And then I take another look at what he's proposing, and it's pro-investor, it's pro-downtown, it's pro-walking and commuting for our citizens. That's how I take a look at it.
Does that study, if I might ask, anticipate if we create more? I agree with you, by the way, as a big city person, about creating more mixed uses and having people live and work in the downtowns. Did that study anticipate having potential residential uses, like an apartment building, that kind of thing?
I believe it did in the fact that it talked about the occupancy rate. So right now,
That's where you get into trouble when each
right
apartment
now we have an
building is-
occupancy rate with the current parking post all of this of only 36%. So I can double it and still have a 30% left over, which if we doubled it, I think that would be amazing. I would be amazed to look at what downtown Mountain Home looks like if we have 60%, 70% of those parking spots filled.
I would love to see apartments downtown, some housing. I think it'd be great.
And these are all great discussions.
Right.
And I
But
think
that's exactly it. We haven't gone
We
far
haven't
enough
had-
into it to decide.
we've got a week, we've got 10 days, we've got 2 weeks. This is a complicated, parking is a complicated, emotional discussion. So I don't disagree with you, Brad, trust me. I just think we need more time.
What's your opinion?
I like it. I don't have any problems with it because I don't feel like it's gonna reduce the amount of parking we have. It would simply add parking, and that would be on the private property owner to make that decision. So if I'm thinking in my head right, if somebody tears down a building, then they can build it in the exact same footprint they have. We haven't lost anything. So I mean, I would vote to move this forward tonight personally, but I mean, I can wait. People have waited for me, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We do sometimes wait, and we've come to the right decision. If we come to the right decision tonight, we can come to the right decision in a week.
Okay, so we're gonna push it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll push that one, 9-7-8.
All right. Next, also deals with downtown, the C2 zoning district. Right now, you're looking at the only property within the city of Mountain Home, which is zone C2, which is primarily located within downtown. Our current building setbacks for any new buildings that are to go in are that there needs to be a 10-foot front setback. So our current existing buildings that are built right along the sidewalk, if there was to be a new building to go in there, it would have to be 10 feet away from the sidewalk with an 8-foot alley setback or 16-foot if there is not any alley. Also, the current allowed height is 45 feet. That is per the Mountain Home Fire Department. They measured the Mellon building. The Mellon building is approximately 48 feet tall. What is being proposed is for the C2 zoning district to preserve the existing footprint, which is downtown, the downtown feel, that the building setbacks be moved to a 0-foot front setback, and 0 alley rear, and a 0 without an alley, and that the proposed height be increased to 55 feet tall. Staff determined that we did not want any sort of building that would necessarily dwarf the Mellon building. I believe the Mellon building kind of set the standard of downtown. I believe a building that is 7 feet taller doesn't necessarily detrimentally change the Mountain Home skyline, for lack of better words.
Real quick, Mayor, did we allow the hub plaza to go above 45 feet?
So,
To what did that?
I don't remember.
I can't remember, but I think it's right around 45 feet, 40 to 45 feet.
We had to do a slight.
Yeah, we did some modifications to allow that.
And to me, I would like to see, I mean, obviously, so your front setbacks, your 0 alley, 0, that's because the current footprint is that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if someone were to come in, then they'd have to do all the setback requirements. The proposed height, is that as high as we can go with the potential of the new fire truck? Is that why we're only going that high? Can we go higher?
We could potentially go higher. We have fire apparatus per Chief Moore that can go that high. I suspect that can go well beyond. A lot of these buildings, you have to know, new buildings are sprinklered as well as an extra fire precaution. I personally did not recommend to go any taller because I believe that Mountain Home does have a unique character to it, and that's something I didn't want to deviate from. And I believe that having something that is harmonious with our tallest building, which is currently the Mellon building, would be the most well received by our current population here, while still installing some sense of innovation and improvement.
The only problem I have with this one here is strictly the zero alley, because that's where all the dumpsters are at and everything else. What are we gonna do to provide for dumpster spaces for everything when everything gets up against the alley and there is no space to put the dumpsters?
So that's a great comment, Councilman. When a building permit is submitted, they still have to have all of the necessary components, such as where are you gonna put your trash? And they have to be able to show me that. And they have to be able to show me how it's going to be exited. Now let's say there's two buildings that can share a singular trash area or receptacle.
So
that
that
means-
while you make it so you can't go through.
The zero alley, so there's still gonna be an alleyway. It's
Okay.
just saying that you can build up right to that
Right to
public
the
right of
alleyway,
way.
thank you.
There just has to be some inset back
Mhm.
in, but I've seen several things like that missed on
But
blueprints.
that doesn't mean that they can get away with having a trash enclosure that no one can access. That would be confronted. So this doesn't supersede any of those regulations.
It was one of the areas that we were talking about here to go to this third floor, a potential in the hub area, something like that, or just anywhere.
Granted, this is anywhere down.
Anywhere in the
But that's kind
downtown
of one of
zone.
the areas that we're thinking is a possible area.
Correct. And we have that
And
area.
that's where we thought about and talked about.
And that would be one that would fit into this perfectly, because if you tore down the hub and tried to put something new in there, half the space you'd lose for parking, for off-street parking requirements. So this way you don't lose that parking is what. And setbacks, exactly. Setbacks and parking would make this building non-usable.
Mike, I'm not really tracking what you're saying. Are you talking about the zero alley specifically on the back of the building?
Yeah, fronts, sides, I understand that, because that's the way everything else is built down there. You can't do too much. You start hitting all of the setbacks requirements for 20-foot setback, 15-foot side setbacks, 16-foot rear setbacks, or 8-foot setbacks in this area. Well, now you're cutting down the space that's usable for anybody to build in. And I don't have a problem with the 0-0, but the back was the only one, because of once these buildings get tore down and rebuilt, then you have something to where you can be looking down a complete alley and there's dumpsters sitting out in the alleyway. And then you don't have a usable alley.
Right, okay.
But as Brock said, as long as they're caught in the plan section of it, when they review the plans, then it's not a problem. But if it's missed, well, then they have somebody that has a dumpster floating around that is just sitting there.
So we're never gonna vacate that alley, right?
I don't know why we would, no, because we've got sewer lines and power lines and everything else going down there, whether there's too much stuff in those alleys.
Okay. I agree with the zero front, but I think there, and I don't have the same brain you do here, but there needs to be some space off the alley for that miscellaneous.
So, and to kind of piggyback off what Councilman was saying over here. So for the miscellaneous components that are required for commercial development, such as your trash receptacle, they would still have to have that. And if it's sitting in the alleyway, that's public right of way. I would say, no, it can't go there. Show me where your trash is going. Show me how it's leaving. So during the plan review process, they would have to figure out a way that, well, I guess we can't build all the way up there, so we're going to have to leave this area right here for trash services. So what I want to get at is, in regards to commercial development, there are so many other regulations that govern development as a whole, and this does not exempt you from those other ones as well. You know, I have people that call me with huge multifamily projects, and they're like, how many units can I build on this piece of property? And I'm like, it's not so simple, because each unit has parking, each unit has trash receptacles, each unit has X amount of green space. I can't tell you that, because all of those are taken into consideration during the review. So what I would state, if your primary concern is trash receptacles or other miscellaneous components that are required by commercial development, that yes, all of those have to be met, and this does not exempt you from doing that.
So if you have a 70-foot wide building, then 30 of it might be able to just go to zero the zero alley, and then they still have to have some to show it out.
It is, there's ways of going around it. It's just at times when you have something as plain as ink as this is, and then you change it expecting somebody to pick it up down the line to make sure that they have reviewed the plans correctly, it can get missed, is the only thing I was commenting.
Yeah.
To where, but I know how Brock is and I know how Hank is back there, how both of them want to look at things the way that they is. It can be moved to another section to where it can go in the building section because it is right there. Where are you gonna put your trash at?
Mhm.
There's a possibility. That's the only thing that I was curious about as to what exactly Brock was planning for that decision.
And we're using a commercial or a contracted company for commercial building plans.
Exactly. No, well, yes, we are now, well, for some of them. Hankin is reviewing some of them he's sending off to a firm to do.
So is it written in there? Is that an understood, or is that just something that we know here that we have to provide?
That's just something that is understood by the people who review these plans and whatnot like that.
So
But
in 10 years?
there's stuff that
5
does
years?
get missed, but
Technically, I should be reviewing every commercial plan.
For how long?
Along with Hank, forever. That's part of a planner's job.
right.
An absolute-
So where I don't really have a problem with this, I just wanted to bring that up just so I could see exactly where Brock was coming from with this.
So before I came here, the building official took on the zoning official job duties as well. In other larger municipalities, it was the city planner who made sure there was enough parking. It was the city planner who made sure there was enough green space. It was the city planner that looked at some setbacks such as these. And we were one of the parties that reviewed those plans. Technically, I believe if we want to ensure that more things aren't missed, you need to get more eyes on certain items. And I believe this is one of those items that planning and zoning that I myself would be looking at, or until we have someone serving in a planning technician or assistant city planner capacity, that they would be in charge of those examinations as well to make sure these are missed.
Exactly. More than one eye on it is
That was my
always
question.
fantastic. And I would love that to happen to where any commercial plans, if it's not sent out to somebody especially, Brock looks at too. There's nothing wrong with that. And then anybody thing that we send out, we're gonna be getting a full list of items that they say, here, you guys need to look at this.
What did planning and zoning say regarding this proposal?
Right here,
All right.
they recommended that the amending of the zoning schedule of bulk and coverage controls regarding the C2 zoning districts 9-7-8 in the following manner. Upon the approval and policy changes of the Idaho Transportation Department, which I wanted to get to, I was curious why we had that requirement in the first place. In my conversations with Carl, who is our representative regionally from ITD, I spoke to him and he told me, well, I believe that's an ITD rule that we don't want you building there. So even if we were to approve this, ITD may say no. But then what I replied to Carl with, I was like, why on earth would you allow us to do this multi-million-dollar downtown revitalization project that expanded the sidewalks, but still not let the buildings build up to it? Because we already encroached more within that public drive area. And he said, that's an excellent point. And then I told him, and there's the historic context as well. I've spoken to the Idaho Historic Society to potentially drafting a letter of support in favor of these construction standards, because this is what preserves the feeling of downtown. Once we start building buildings to this footprint that we currently have, which is 10 feet away from the front, 8 or so feet from the back, as these buildings deteriorate and disappear, your downtown is going to look totally different. Where he also said that ITD would greatly consider that. He has not been able to produce. I've asked for him, can you show me where in the rules where it says that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know how they have
And
legal
it
authority
hasn't,
on that.
and there hasn't been. And when I spoke to the historic planner who is with the State Historic Preservation Society, he actually worked for ITD as one of their planners. He said, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't think they have jurisdiction.
I got
So
one question then with that now. Now, with zero front setback,
Mhm.
now, are you classifying where the building's front right now is that the front setback? Or can they
Property line.
move into the sidewalks that we're tearing up and replacing now?
The property line, where the property is, and I don't believe we have any building owner who owns any part of the sidewalk. That's all
Okay,
public
but I didn't
right-of-way.
think so, but I just wanted to make
No,
sure that
you-
we weren't talking
no
about
one-
being able for them to move out further.
No, no one can encroach upon public
Okay.
right of way. That's public right of way.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that they were all, okay.
Councilman, so kind of on your question also, there really wasn't a whole bunch of discussion with this one. They kind of thought, well, we just put a big sidewalk in, so why are we gonna make them go 10 more feet and have more sidewalk? So, losing that building, so.
Yeah. They can come up with a parking area.
Yeah.
So Councilman, with the 9-7-8, what do you guys want to do? You want to push that, or you're good with this one?
Question, sorry, Mayor. Paul, if we were to approve this, I think we've done it before, but I just want to ask, can we as a city council make exceptions to the building height rule? If somebody comes to us and say, I want a 62-foot building, is that in our purview to allow?
Conditional use permit, maybe?
So, yes, although there's a really,
I could be fine line, isn't it?
I had the unfortunate experience of arguing KGF versus the city of Ketchum to try to do that very thing. And we got shot down pretty fast, but that there's some nuances with that one, what they called spot zoning, and there was a few issues there. The short answer is yes. If you wanted to do a variance and or an outright waiver to allow a building to go higher than that, in theory, you can do that. And one of the moron arguments the opponent made was, well, but I was only allowed to do 55 feet, and now I can sit on the roof and look at the sunsets, and now I can't do that with the 62-foot building next to me. Well, there's no such thing. You could buy a view easement, but you don't get one automatically. But that is a loaded question, I guess I'll say, because there was a lot of arguments that could be made as to creating a spot zone, in essence, by allowing a building to be 62 feet when everybody else around it is 55 feet.
Mr. Mayor.
And what do you get for it, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a difficult question, but in theory, yes, you can. It's just, there's a lot of arguments that an opponent can make.
Not recommended.
Councilman Brennan, maybe if I can answer to the intent of why I'm making this blanket rule for this zone is the cost of development depends significantly upon time. So when developers purchase a property, more often than not, do they have property that's shovel ready. It's fairly common that there are zoning actions that need to happen with the property in order to develop what they ultimately want to develop. So what they'll do is, as a contingent upon the purchase of that property, is they'll outline within the contract, you'll give me a year to get all my planning and zoning stuff done. What I'm trying to do is limit the amount of public hearings that are needed for development that I believe that we want, that I believe when you look in our comprehensive plan that we want downtown. As we have to do a variance every time for a building downtown, as to height or setbacks or what have you, that for the developer, that takes away time. Time is money. And it creates greater uncertainty to whether a project is even feasible.
So he was saying if you wanted to do 62 feet.
Just as an example.
Yes.
And
Something different.
And I
what
believe
I'm really
what-
curious is 55 foot a scientific number for building? Is 55 feet a typical 4-story building or a 5-story building? Or is 55 feet going to be a super awkward 3.5-story
So-
building?
When you say stories level, in today's current development environment, we have products that are so different that have 10-foot ceilings, some have 8-foot ceilings, some have 9-foot ceilings. I believe that the 55-foot, for example, the 55-foot is what is in Twin Falls downtown, and people are building there that are aesthetically pleasing. And the height, what it does is, I believe any number, be it 52 feet, be it 51 feet, could still produce a good looking building.
And I'm gonna kind of just piggyback a little bit on this, just kind of thought of this and keeping it kind of historically downtown. I mean, again, if we end up with the, getting rid of the traffic, getting rid of the parking. So we don't want to put, we have to be conscious of how many, like, apartments are gonna be there so people can actually live there. So this is a good, it's a good mix. You got some businesses, you have a couple floors that people live. So if somebody wants to build a big apartment complex, I think we have more, we can push into American Legion and some spots out there where we can have, I think those are some other spots to push higher buildings.
But the 55 feet will give us a typical three-story multi-function building, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or what about minimum height? Because we don't want a building to get knocked down and then get a single story, 8-foot ceiling building in there, right?
I believe that's when it comes down to property development rights.
Yeah.
In essentially what you would want to take away. And I would use, the same argument going back to parking. Like, if we're going to regulate that, I have no idea why we're not regulating the parking.
I get it. But then I'm like, okay, we're not going to tell them they can do a 1-story, but then we are limiting them on the height.
Mhm.
So we're choosing to limit one, but not the other.
So minimums, that's generally, so maximums is more of a carrot approach. Minimums is more of a stick approach when it comes to development, saying, well, it has to be at least this. Which I don't believe, given how much that land is worth, that any conscious person would be like, all right, I'm going to tear down the Millen building and I'm putting in a 7-Eleven.
Your point is well taken, though, because in cities like in Manhattan, for example, they do have those. They do have, you can't go in there because some idiot would be, to make a political statement, would want to have something small or in there just to say this is the way it should be, sort of thing. So that, and big cities are actually do have some minimums, but in the political climate of a state like Idaho, he's right. Property rights are they're gonna win on that every time.
If you ever wanted to discuss minimums, though, I'm game.
I'm not.
Minimums are what you have in the building code. This is a minimum requirement. You can't build any less than this.
Yeah.
You can build anything else more, but
Mr. Mayor, I have no problem with this one. Before I make a motion, I'd like to apologize to Nina for waking her up with my phone. I'd like to make the motion that we amend the zoning schedule bulk and coverage controls regarding C2 zoning district 9-7-8 and following nature, front setback and rear setback 0 feet, and a max building height of 55 feet.
The motion and second will call for the question. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman Bundy?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
I'm sorry, for clarification, you did not add in the upon approval of ITD, right?
I did not.
Okay, good. Aye.
Councilman Blakey?
Aye.
All right, next one.
All right, this is the last one. So currently within our bulk and coverage controls, we have a footnote which says that business shall be conducted within enclosed buildings in the LO, C1, C2, and C3 districts. All of here are kind of examples of business that occurs within our city, which isn't necessarily within a building. Here's C3. We have some C2, we have some C4. Technically, if I was to produce a strict reading utilizing this footnote, I could argue that our fireworks stands, that people pushing hot dog carts, that people in food trucks are illegal because the commercial activity is not occurring within an enclosed building. So what I am proposing and what Planning and Zoning Commission recommended, that footnote 9 concerning business to be conducted within a enclosed building found in the zoning schedule of bulk and coverage controls for commercial industrial districts 9-7-8 be repealed.
All that's doing is taking away saying they have to be in a building.
Yep.
And their hot dog stand is allowed.
Yep.
And no comments
Don't we
from the
do
brick and
some-
mortar?
No comments.
Don't we do some type of an agreement with the fireworks stands already?
Albertsons does, or Walmart probably does an agreement.
Don't we?
They have to come get a license from the city.
That's what it is, okay.
You'd have to expand, make sure the regulations for vendors and such addresses that, because I don't know if they're tailored to be addressing the C123s. I agree with the footnote probably needs to go away, but we have to make sure. I'm amazed that the brick and mortars haven't addressed this at all. The restaurants and the bars and stuff will be having open competition with the hot dog guy right out front.
We had one guy come in and openly complain about food truck places.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is gonna basically allow food trucks, but you said, right, that you are bringing a food truck ordinance specifically for those to us.
Or do we handle it in a different place?
Yes. So currently, we aren't using this to enforce our current food trucks, and nor do I believe that this body wants me to start enforcing this tomorrow.
And what about the guy that decides, okay, I own this property on American Legion, I'm just gonna start hauling all my shit out here on my property, and then I'm just gonna stick a sign up that says, Mike's Junk, come on in. And just, everything just scattered around through my property.
Well, I would consult the zoning ordinance to see if that's an allowed use. If it isn't a allowed use, it does have development standards still tied to it.
But it doesn't have to be an enclosed building though. It may have some other loops to jump through, but it doesn't have to be an enclosed building.
That doesn't mean you can bring all of your stuff and just lay it aside.
But a business can be open, you say, that's my business.
I believe what you're referring to on an undeveloped piece of land, there are still other regulations and ordinances within the zoning ordinance which would prevent that.
It'd be a yard sale beyond 24 hours.
A yard sale, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Well, not if I bought new stuff and brought new stuff to it.
Are you telling me what you're gonna do with your retirement, Councilman?
No, I just know sooner or later somebody's gonna come up and they're gonna wanna drop all their junk in the middle of someplace, and, because we've fought with people before on different things to where,
Oh, yeah.
as
Although,
long as you can get it and you can make it work, I don't have a problem. Because the three items that you mentioned there, perfectly legitimate.
And I kind of thinking about history with why footnote 9 was kind of in there, is because we used to have the transit merchant license.
yeah.
And so that was really pushed by the brick and mortar. And so, which we really can't do. So that's kind of, that was my thought of why footnote 9 was in.
That makes sense.
So what ordinance is it you're referring to that would prevent something happening that Mike's telling us about?
Well, there's our general nuisance ordinances, and what is that use? Sounds what he's describing could probably be considered a junkyard, where I believe in all those districts, it's not a permitted use.
In C3, not a pawn shop, but a used store, secondhand store would be allowed use. Not a pawn shop, but a secondhand store would be an allowed use in a C3.
Then it would be on the burden of whoever owns that property to prove that to me,
Prove what?
that they really are indeed a secondhand store. If it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, that's generally the test that would be applied.
Actually,
So
unfortunately, our burden is, I'm the one who has to prove that it isn't when we cite them. I'm the one, I get to carry that burden. So, yeah, I mean, I understand Mike's point. Because sure, secondhand junk store, this might be your nuisance and junk, but it's my treasure. We've gone to court on that so many times.
It would be a conditional use permit if they were a pawn shop. That'd be a different thing, then we'd have a control over it. But I think it's just as a secondhand store, I think it's just an allowed use, which is one more time we need to go through what is allowed in what districts or what zones.
And without the brick and mortar, that'll be an interesting.
Oh, God, yes.
And what do they do with all their stuff at the end of the day? It's just,
They take it to the residents.
yeah.
Is this kind of like the lawnmower shop that just, although they had a roof and a building, brick and mortar. They also just left crap out their front door for,
Oh, you mean the one down here in American Legion?
no.
Oh, this is the different one then.
John Supply on
Highway 30.
Oh, Highway 30?
And Mike, what's one thing we tell people to get out of their nuisance tickets and all the junk? Just put it inside.
Put it in the house.
If you put it inside, we
As long as
don't
we
have a
don't see
problem
it,
with
put it
it.
behind a fence, so we don't care.
Just do
You've been
that.
talking shorter, haven't you?
But now they'll say, well, it's my business. It could be outside.
So legally, are we where we need to be, Paul, with this, if we amend this?
I do not know. I've never prosecuted anybody for a footnote. So it probably needs some drafting considerations. But some thought about what Mike's worried about, and I don't agree that I can go after somebody for a nuisance if they're selling secondhand stuff and they could tell me, here's my business license. I could sell this stuff all day long.
We don't have a business
I would
license.
not win that in court. I'm going to lose that. So I think probably more thought for that one.
You want to at least fix the footnote?
Yeah, having it be in a footnote is goofy. I didn't realize that at
So
all.
how can we word this then, Paul, that we can still take a look at the rest of the, this ordinance, but then also at least get the footnote out so then the food trucks can be in compliant where right now they're not?
Well, I think maybe if you bring this back when we do the vendor stuff, we could figure out a way for the vendors to be, citywide regulations that would apply to the vendors. Where you are on, I see Mike's consideration on private property,
Exactly,
but no structures there.
exactly.
They're gonna have this complete eyesore that is, quote, now a business, an allowed business. So we need to address that, but still allow the vendors to be throughout the downtown. I think we can accomplish both.
So bring us back.
At least that's my recommendation to you, just so we don't create an unintended consequence.
Councilman, you all right with that?
Yeah.
Okay, bring it on back.
Rob, quick question.
Yes,
How many footnotes are there? I'm
at least
surprised.
9.
Okay.
I was just gonna say about 12,
And I
15.
completely agree with Brock that why on earth it's in a footnote.
I don't know.
I mean, that's just goofy.
Mhm.
No, Your Honor, look farther down. That's a footnote.
So with that, that's everything I have for you. And with this body, I guess my final comment and how I'm going to do things in the future was I love the conversation that's happening, but nothing I did necessarily was a secret. We all knew parking was coming up, and I've had things available. I've given multiple drafts. Please respond to those, please. It hurts me as an employee to know if today was your first time looking at some stuff. Very disappointed of the countless hours that goes into creating these reports to making it so that things can happen. Please do your homework. Please read up before. If you have conversations about things coming up, come to me. I have developed a community development staff report, which will be issued on a monthly basis, which gives you a snapshot into everything I'm doing. Read those and look at those so I can receive your comments faster. So it's not at the actual approval time that, oh, well, this is complicated. When we did know that we were going to speak about certain items well before coming to this. So I just want to be able to be an effective member of your team and act in the most efficient way possible. I know all of you are busy. There's no way you can read everything I send to you. But please know that we are taking on a Herculean task and that your effort is much appreciated by our staff.
Brock, don't get me wrong, I wasn't trying to beat you up on this, really. I appreciate everything you've done here.
Did you want to set a date for this working group that you're going to bring these other ones back to?
What day do you guys want to do it?
Can we add it to Fridays?
You want to do it on Friday?
Councilman Brennan's not here on the Friday.
Is there another meeting that we already have scheduled?
You had the one set for the rec district meeting on September 23rd, but I don't know how long you're going to be with the rec district. And you're going to be at the rec district office.
I'd rather just not slow down Brock's progress here.
Should we show up early for the next council meeting?
Friday.
Early,
Councilman Brandon won't be able to.
the next one,
The
the
28th.
regular one.
Oh, the
sorry.
regular one,
28th.
okay.
Okay with that.
Early, so you want, what time are we saying? On the 28th?
5.
5 o'clock on the 28th?
Perfect.
I think so. I don't have my calendar right now. Somebody has taken it away from me.
And real quick, while we have Brock here,
We just wanted to get you off Facebook, that's all.
Brock, I want you to feel comfortable that all 4 of us have been spending considerable time on the parking issue. We've been working on the parking issue for 3 years. So I don't imagine that there's anybody here that today was their first day of looking at it. We've all spent hours and hours and hours of time looking at parking. We've all, hopefully, I know I've come in and talked to you many times, and I would assume that the other 3 councilmen. And I know you weren't trying to insinuate that this was the first time anyone had seen it, but it is definitely not the first time that anyone has seen it. Okay?
All right, I'm gonna, go back to Robert's Rules of Orders. We'll run down to item number 8, ordinances.
Mayor, yes, sir. I was gonna ask a question. Do you mind?
Okay.
Nina, if he has stuff ready to go for like our packet, maybe a week ahead of time, is he allowed to send that to us so that we can have more than the weekend?
Absolutely, it'll still be in your packet, but
But please don't hit reply all and
Yeah.
start deliberating.
Yeah. And the thing that a lot of us do, and I'm sure you do this also, we'll go in 10 days ahead and ask Nina what's on the agenda, and she'll tell us. We all have access to that information for sometimes up to 2 weeks.
sometimes I don't get the information on, like, this was
Correct.
not on the agenda till that
Yeah,
day
but-
I was doing the
but other
packet,
things
so
that
you
we
would
do,
not have
so-
known that.
And I've seen everybody in there talking to her about it, so yes.
All right, go
Now,
back.
this one, there was just such a fast move of so many items is why I'm sorry, Mayor, is why I wanted a little bit more time on a couple
Understood.
items.
All righty, going back to Robert's Rules of Orders here. We'll run down to
Oh,
item
did we do
number 8, ordinances, ordinance annex, Knutson Gatlin property, action item.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Bundy.
I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the 3 reading rule and read this ordinance by title only for its one and only reading tonight with the stipulation that the stamp is approved and verified.
Second. The motion is second, and I'll call for the question. Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes? Aye. Councilman Bundy?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Please read the ordinance.
An ordinance annexing the city of Mountain Home, Idaho, the real property hereinafter described, and declaring the same by proper legal description thereof to be a part of said city of Mountain Home, Idaho, and providing an effective date.
Councilman, you've heard this ordinance read. Do you wish it to pass? Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Bundy?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes? Aye. Alrighty. Run down to ordinance zoning R4 Knutson Gatlin property.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Bundy.
I make the motion that we suspend the 3 reading rule and read this ordinance by title only for its one and only reading tonight with stipulation that the stamp is verified.
Second. The motion is second. I'll call for the question. Councilman Stokes? Aye. Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Bundy?
Aye.
Nina, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the city of Mountain Home, Idaho, declaring the real property hereinafter described to be a part of the residential R4 zone, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Councilman, you've heard this ordinance read. Do you wish it to pass? Councilman Bundy?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
All righty. Final comments really quick. I want to send a huge shout out to all the councilmen that partook in the AFAD video. It came out really, really great. So I appreciate you guys taking your time. I know you guys are busy guys, but and I love that you had I saw Colette in there, and I appreciate my wife being a part of that too. So I got to give her a shout out. She doesn't like do videos, but it was fun. It came out really fantastic. I want to say thank you to the AFAD committee for this year's virtual AFAD and the fun runs and all that too. I know it's a lot of work goes into it, and a lot of people don't understand all the hard work that goes into it. So I want to thank the AFAD committee. Other than that, I got nothing else. Councilman, anything? All right, then we will run into item number 10, executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74206, subsection 1, subsection C, to acquire interest in real property which is not owned by a public agency.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Stokes.
I make a motion to enter executive session pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74, 201, 206, subsection 1C, to acquire an interest in real property which is not owned by a public agency.
The motion is seconded. I'll call for the question. Councilman Kane?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan? Aye. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman Buddy?
Aye.
All righty, we'll run into executive session. All right,